We'll get right to our agenda. This evening we do have a faith blessing, and I see that Reverend Claire Miller is here from St. Thomas Anglican Church, and I would invite you to come forward now, Reverend Miller, and provide us the faith blessing. Thank you. Welcome.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you have given us this good land as our heritage. May we prove ourselves a people mindful of your generosity and glad to do your will. Bless our land with honest industry, truthful education, and an honorable way of life. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil course of action. Make us, who came from many nations with many different languages, a united people. Defend our liberties, and give those whom we have entrusted with the authority of government the spirit of wisdom, that there may be justice and peace in our land. When times are prosperous, let our hearts be thankful, and in troubled times, do not let our trust in you fail. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Any member of council have additional items for this evening? Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I have two, one on housing and one on transit.
Okay. Councillor Purdon.
I have one item proposing a letter to the IOC.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I have two invitations, one to an environmental movie this week, and the other one to our About a Good Neighbor meeting.
Sure. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two items. One is a caution and one is a congrats.
Anybody else on this side? See none. I have a couple of items. One with regards to meeting with the MP on harbour dredging, and as well as meeting with the Member of Parliament for expansion, to discuss expansion of Georgian College. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regard to, let me check the item number, 12B8, the budget, any discussion around the potential grant to the Regional Health Centre, I will be declaring a pecuniary interest.
Anyone else? Councillor Chamberlain?
And mine is the same one.
It's noted. Confirmation of the minutes, please, from January 27th.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wright that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on January 27th, 2014, as printed, be adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Resolution moving council and committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wright that City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We're now in committee of the whole. We do have a public meeting this evening. This is our third public meeting on the 2014 budget process. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the council meeting. Councillor Twaddle, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're now in the public meeting, and I'll read the following note. Section 290, subsection 1 of the Municipal Act requires a municipality to prepare and adopt a budget each year. This public meeting is to provide an opportunity for members of the public to offer comments on the city's 2014 budget as presented. Chair requests, this is where I request comments from the clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to advise Council that notice of tonight's public meeting was provided on February the 5th, 2014. It was provided through a media release given to the media and also posted on the city's website and through social media. No comments have been received to date respecting the budget. If there are comments from the public this evening, I'd like to advise that any comments that you provide and any public and private information that you provide with those comments will be collected under the authority of the Municipal Act in order to complete the budget process and will form part of the public record. And if anyone has questions about the collection of information, they can be addressed to myself, the city clerk.
Thank you. And now I'll ask for comments. The Manager of Accounting Services, Kate Allen, is going to provide some comments and an overview for those of us that are here this evening. Welcome.
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint presentation here. Password. Sorry, it's okay. All right, so I did bring a few extra copies of the presentation printed out if anyone wants a copy. Otherwise, the entire presentation will be available tomorrow on Civic Web. The budget being presented today and included with the report to follow is mostly as it was presented at Pre-Budget 2 back in November 2013. Since then, the budget has been increased to reflect actual insurance costs, which are paid in January. Also, the final police budget and bylaw budgets have been entered in the detailed pages. Capital budget remains unchanged from Pre-Budget 2. To give you an idea, the overall increase presented today is 4.96%. To give you an idea of what that is, approximately $200,000 change in the budget would translate to a 1% overall increase. The current proposed increase of 4.96% when combined with the county and school board known changes is roughly 3.2%. Driving that increase is a decrease in revenues by 13.5%, and this is mostly the change in the OMPF funding. Also, operating costs have increased by 2.66%, and I've broken that down in this chart by each board. So there's the City of Owen Sound, the Police Board, and included with that is bylaw enforcement, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery, and the North Grey Union Public Library. And then the capital levy has increased by about 30% or $350,000. And part of this represents the allocation of the budgeted decrease in debt principal and interest payments back into the capital budget. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide because it is very small. However, I've left it in for your reference. And the data in this page was used to create the pie charts in the following slides. What you can see here, and I'll try to highlight it, is that the next tax levy down there, the next tax levy is about 25 million. Overall operating costs are about 42 million, so that next tax levy represents about 60% of the total budget. And then the other sources of funding would be other municipal contributions, grants, user fees, and penalties and fines. The next slide focuses on the tax levy, or this 25% or 25 million, and breaks down the net expenditures by department. Council, corporate services, and finance make up 11% of the total budget, and this also includes IT and GIS. Operations includes management, airport operations, roads maintenance, waste management and landfill, engineering and traffic, and represents about 15% of the total levy. Facilities are shown net of revenue generated and require 4% of the total tax levy. Police and fire combined make up about 46% of the levy. And tax-funded debt payments, including principal and interest, make up 8% of the net levy, or approximately $2 million. You won't see slices here for water and wastewater or parking, as these divisions are self-funded, and they're funded through user fees and permits. The next slide breaks down total expenses, so that $41 million from the detailed page breaks down total expenses by type of expense. So as you can see, salaries, wages, and benefits is approximately $22 million, or 53% of the total costs. Materials and supplies includes supplies used by the city, including salt and sand for winter control, fuel for vehicles, as well as printing and postage. It also includes the costs of utilities and insurance. That's in the red slice, about 18%. Contract services includes amounts paid to third-party contractors. Major contracts include the public transit contract, garbage and recycling collection, as well as operation of animal control in the airport facilities, and that's the dark blue slice. Transfers to reserves represent annual contributions to fund future capital replacement. The replacement of corporate fleet assets are entirely funded by reserves. And then the slices of this pie are broken down further in the following slides. So the first one we have is salaries. So taking that 53% and breaking it down even further. Total salaries and wages are about $22 million. Focusing on some of the larger pieces, police and bylaw salaries are budgeted at roughly $8 million, make up 36% of the total. Fire employers' salaries are budgeted to be $4 million. And operations, including transit, is about $2.4 million. And for the dollar amounts associated with some of the other segments, you can refer back to that detailed slide previously. Materials and supplies. We spend about $7.5 million a year on materials and supplies. Under operations, this would include salt and sand materials for winter control and is approximately 27% of the total amount spent. Materials and supplies also includes utility costs, which makes up most of the amounts under facilities, and that's 16% of this graph. General insurance costs are housed under council, finance, and corporate services. The total material costs associated with these departments make up roughly 22%. Contract services, we spend about $6 million a year on third-party contracts. It's about 37% operations is about 37% of the total amount we spend on contract services, and this would include the garbage and recycling collection contracts. Transit contracts make up about 25% of the total. And the amounts paid for general legal fees, audit fees, as well as the contract costs related to the 2014 election are under council, finance, and corporate services, and the total of these departments makes up 15%. So that wraps up sort of the operating budget component of the presentation. I just have a couple more slides focusing on capital. Our total capital budget for 2014 is about $24.4 million. Major capital projects include the continuation of the electrical upgrade at Harrison Park, upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant, reconstruction of 8th Street West from 4th Avenue to 7th Ave West, reconstruction of 3rd Avenue East from north of the wastewater treatment plant to East Bayshore Road, as well as facility improvements at City Hall, the Bayshore, the Animal Control Center, and the Public Works Building. So this slide just shows the breakdown of capital by each department. And this slide shows how capital is budgeted to be funded. So reserves are used to fund fleet purchases. Water and wastewater rates are used to fund related infrastructure. Budgeted grants include provincial and federal 2/3 funding for the wastewater treatment plant, the county's contribution to the 3rd Avenue East reconstruction, and a small rural northern municipal funding approved for the 8th Street East reconstruction. Debenture issuance will be used to pay for the electrical upgrade at Harrison Park, the East Side Booster Station upgrades, the unfunded portion of the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the installation of solar energy panels. 6% of the total capital budget is to be funded from taxation, and the remainder is from other sources. That wraps up my presentation.
That represents an enormous amount of work in a very short presentation. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I would now ask if there are any people here this evening or any person here this evening who would like to provide any comment on the city's 2014 budget at this time. Seeing none, I'll declare the public,
I just have, I don't like to use this microphone, but I just have.
if you could just say your name and your
I'm
address.
sorry, my name is
And-
Ben Pischel. I live on 11th Street West.
Sure.
I don't like to use this microphone, but I just have concern about the transit in this city, that's all. That's all I want to say. I use it quite frequently, and I know like students use it quite frequently, and older people use it quite frequently. It's one of the reasons why I came here tonight was to address that thing.
Okay.
It's kind of nerve-wracking in front of this many people, but.
Part of the public record. You've just, you've got your thoughts are out there, and there is another opportunity later in the agenda. It's called public question period, if you like. You can stand up and ask a question of council. If you are not so comfortable to do that, you're more than welcome to speak to any one of us anytime after council or any day of the week.
I'm sorry, I'm just kind of nervous.
That's okay.
It's my first time here, so.
That's okay. Welcome. We're a pretty friendly bunch, really, most of the time. Thank you for your comments. Are there any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll move that the public meeting now be closed. And I'd like a motion, please, to reconvene the council meeting. Councillor Burton, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We are now back in our regular council meeting, Committee of the Whole. We do have a couple of deputations, and I will invite Roberta Brignall, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Grey Bruce. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're going to tell us about a smart and caring community education fund, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Sorry, I might just get this off the screen.
I'll just announce it and you can go ahead. I have a short message here from the Governor General for you.
When I was installed as Governor General, I called upon all Canadians to join in the effort to build a smarter, more caring nation. For all the good that exists in this great country of ours, we still face many challenges. We can and we must do better. Canadians know this, and they also know that successful communities are the key to building the better country of which we dream. That's why I'm so pleased to Smart and Caring Communities movement to inspire change from the ground up. Through this initiative, the Community Foundations of Canada network has set two important goals. The first is to ensure that every community is served by a foundation in time for the 150th anniversary of Confederation in 2017. The second goal is to connect the country through the establishment of flexible community funds nationwide. As patron of Community Foundations of Canada, I'm delighted to see this vision take shape. For more than 90 years, community foundations have been dedicated to building better places to live, work, and play. I've seen firsthand the impact these organizations can have in our lives, and I'm confident that great things are in store through this new initiative. Together, we have arrived at an important moment in our communities and in the history of Canada. We face complex and interrelated problems, but the opportunities for creativity and collaboration are abundant. Our success will depend upon our ability to help others and to address important issues. And the Smart and Caring Communities movement has the potential to expand our reach and effectiveness greatly right across Canada. With the launch of this initiative, Canada's community foundations are mobilizing to help others and to strengthen our country. It's the very definition of smart and caring. On behalf of all Canadians, I wish you every success.
Just to take you back a little bit, I'm here tonight to make two announcements for the Community Foundation of Grey Bruce. 2014 marks the 20th anniversary of Community Foundation Grey Bruce serving our communities. From our humble beginnings in 1994, when the foundation was known as the Owen Sound and Area Community Foundation, I have with me tonight the first annual report, which was written in August 1996. The then chair, Arlene Wright, wrote, this is our little report. A message from the chair. As the Owen Sound and Area Community Foundation enters its second year of operation, one can only breathe a sigh of immense pleasure. Pleasure at knowing that we are on our way. Pleasure at having so many capable and accountable people in our community who have served and continue to serve on the board of directors, on the executive committee, and other committees. And the pleasure of looking forward to giving out grants for the second time this fall, knowing these grants will benefit our community forever. We also had the Noble family of Shallow Lake create the first endowed fund to support minor hockey, and there was 3 grants given out that night, one to the Girl Guides, to the Bruce Trail, to the Boys and Girls Club in Owen Sound. And in 1996, total assets stood at $300,000. We have made great strides over the last 20 years. Our name is now Community Foundation of Grey Bruce. Total assets now stand at just over $13 million, with 85 endowed funds and grants to over 105 not-for-profit organizations presented in 2013. To celebrate our 20th anniversary, the foundation has initiated a wide-spreading outreach program in Grey and Bruce counties to invite all residents to be part of their community foundation. We have over 142 volunteers with ambassadors in each municipality, city, and territory to help us spread the word. Over the course of this year, each area will have anniversary banners, story and picture displays of grantees and donors, printouts of information about the foundation, and special events. The ambassadors for the City of Owen Sound are the members of the Owen Sound Community Fund. We have some present tonight, Fred Furness, Jan Chamberlain, Jim McMenamin, and there's a number of other people that were not able to attend tonight. In partnership with the Foundation's 20th Anniversary Committee, the Owen Sound Community Fund volunteers have been assisting us in planning for the year. Watch for window displays, an open house, and events throughout the year coming up. Now, secondly, the Right Honourable David Johnston, Governor-General of Canada and patron of Community Foundations of Canada, has challenged community foundations across Canada, which now reach coast to coast, to identify an issue in their area and to create a smart and caring community fund dealing with that issue. The initiatives across Canada will be recorded in the Sesquicentennial Celebrations book in Ottawa in 2017. After much consideration, the Community Foundation Grey Bruce has chosen Pathways to Education as our initiative and have made a commitment to the Governor-General to attempt to establish a $1 million education endowed fund by 2017 for students from Grey and Bruce counties. Literacy and education programs that enhance the quality and ease accessibility of learning and educational opportunities throughout our area are imperative to providing sustainable communities that can keep our residents, especially our youth, living and working in Grey Bruce. The Pathways to Education Fund will follow the guidelines of the Board of Education by including 4 pillars of education: university, college, apprenticeship, and workplace, with scholarships, bursaries, and prizes. A team of educators from Grey Bruce have been established to assist with the criteria, the application forms, and to assist in choosing the recipients. A match funding program has also been put in place, offering 50 cents on the dollar up to a maximum of $10,000 for each new education fund started. The question I have for you tonight is, how is the City of Owen Sound going to celebrate the sesquicentennial? If you have no plans in mind, I would like to invite you to consider joining your community foundation in our sesquicentennial project. With your endorsement and assistance, the city and the foundation can promote this education fund, helping to reach our goal by 2017 of $1 million Pathways to Education Fund to be recorded in the Sesquicentennial Book in Ottawa. I know that you received quite a bit of our information electronically, but I also have the yearly report in print if any one of you would like to have your own copy.
Thank you very much, Roberta, for this presentation and bringing this
You're
good news.
welcome.
And congratulations to you and all of the folks who have served in the past and currently with the Grey Bruce Community Foundation. Certainly the work that's done through the fundraising efforts is incredible throughout the community, and
Thank you.
we certainly appreciate what you're doing.
Good. I was wondering if there would be a chance that I could come back in about a month for your answer.
You can come back as often as you like. Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. I can see the wheels are turning right now. So Roberta will have an answer for you very soon. Thank you. We do have one more deputation, Diane Folds and Mindy Gill, Museums Curator of Collections from the Owen Sound Museums. And this is a presentation on some upcoming events. Welcome, Mindy.
Hello. Diane Folds couldn't be with us tonight, so we actually have Dave Alexander. So.
Mr. Alexander, welcome.
There we go. And there we go. Okay. So we're here from the Bishop House, and we're inviting you to preserve your past for the future on Saturday, February the 15th. So first off, this past Saturday was Billy Bishop's 120th birthday. So this is just a little bit about our Owen Sound hometown hero. So he was born on February 8, 1894. He grew up here in Owen Sound, and eventually he went off and he went to Royal Military College, and then he enlisted in the Great War, where he went on to be accredited with 72 victories. And that's why we have a museum dedicated to him here in Owen Sound, and why we celebrate him. Okay. So, Dave, did you want to speak about President? There you go.
Thanks, Mindy. Just before I start, Mindy, just this past Saturday too, that we opened up a new exhibit, and I think she's going to say a few words about it just in a moment. And it focused on medals, and she's done an awesome job. So she continues to do that, which she has now for a considerable while with us. Your worship, counselors, city staff, everyone else here tonight, and of course viewers. As we approach the 100th anniversary of the Great War, Bishop House Museums and Archives is building a digital archive to preserve these priceless documents for us and future generations. We need your help. Pull the dusty boxes off the attic shelves and preserve your family's history. Bring your pictures, letters, diaries, newspaper clippings, posters, military documents, or any other record related to the First or Second World Wars, and we'll create a digital image for you. We're interested in the experience of both men and women who served during these wars, either on the war front or on the home front. Consider it a form of insurance for these treasured documents, as we will ensure that a copy of the image is kept in our digital archive. Bishop House and Archives, in turn, will tell the stories of the local men and women who served their country within the larger context of the events of the First and Second World War. An added feature of Digital Preservation Day will be a display of artifacts by local military enthusiasts George Auer and Mo Boyer. They will have items on display for many of the local serving units, right from the 31st Grey Regiment, the 147th, 248th, and 160th Battalions. That's more associated with the Great War. The 98th Bruce Battalion, and of course Gray and Simcoe Foresters.
Also, our panel would be interested and more than willing to help you find out more details about a relative who served during the World Wars. We'll have computers set up, so if you bring a name, we'll try to do our best to find out about those things for you. So our first Digital Preservation Day is scheduled for this coming Saturday, the 15th, and it will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the OSCVI. We invite you to attend, and I have to thank these people for helping us so far. Staples is our sponsor. They're going to provide the scanners for us. I have to thank Mo Bwyer and George Auer. They're going to set up their militaria. It's quite interesting to look at what they have, and they have like collar dogs, cap badges, stuff like that. I also have to thank OSCVI students. We have a team crew that's going to help us, and they're going to do all this hard kind of, I guess, the grunt work of history, you could call it. And finally, I also have to thank my fellow colleague, OSCVI teacher Ryan McManaman. He's also involved in this project. So again, we're looking for documents that relate to both the Great War and Second World War, and we'd be more than willing to create those images for you. Thank you very much, and I'll let Mindy take over again.
Okay, and then the next event we have coming up is on the Tuesday. So after Family Day, we are presenting our plaques back to the veterans that we honored in 2013. So this is our Plaque Return Ceremony, and it's going to be held at Seasons. So we'd like to thank Seasons for sponsoring that for us. And it'll be a luncheon. It'll start about 1 and go to about 2:30. So you're all invited to attend. And then the exhibit that we just opened on Saturday is, it was called Thanks and Honor. So it's running from February 8th through till August 17th. So you have plenty of time to come down to the museum and have a look. It's about how we commemorate and honor and thank our military. So it's a look at the medals and the various awards that we give to our military. And so that concludes our presentation. So you can come on down and discover history and heritage at the Owen Sound Museums.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There may be a question or two, Mindy. Councillor McManaman.
Yes.
Thank you, Worship. I think the digital preservation is a great idea. It's surprising that never happened before, but that's a super idea. Now, the one problem, tonight's meeting, you talked about the viewers, is on tape delay because of the hockey game, I believe. Mm-hmm. So it probably won't play till next Monday, which means somebody who may be interested in this is going to find out 2 days later that they missed the event. So what could we do, or what can happen in cases like that? Somebody at home has some pictures they want to preserve, have missed last Saturday.
We could, now Mindy would help with this, but we do want to set up, Diane talked about this too, but possibility of setting up appointments where someone can bring this in. One of the spin-offs, and I didn't read the lead up to it, but the mini Wright letters, the McCarroll family shared this with our school, and I'm sure many of us are familiar with this. And what an awesome sharing, and they're great caretakers, but because they allowed our students to get involved with it. And I'll tell you, anyone that has an opportunity to go back and look at these letters, like you're transported back 100 years ago into this town, and you just get to see what it was like, both the vagaries of war and then just everyday society here in Owen Sound. But we more than welcome them to call us anytime, and we would scan their documents for them.
Great. Thank you very much. We look forward to this Saturday. I'm sure you'll be busy. Lots of documents and memorabilia and so on will come forward, I'm sure. Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Well, Your Worship, keeping with the subject of museums, we have a large number of people who are concerned about the CM station and the review 12B2 on the agenda, and I would request respectfully that move forward.
Sure, I don't see any problem with that. Council? Okay, let's bring, we just have a couple of things we'll deal with. First, public question period. Any members of the public here this evening would like to ask a question of council?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. You just state your name and address for the clerks.
My name is Jeffrey Robbins. I own, there we go. Thank you, Councillor. My name is Jeffrey Robbins. I own buildings in the city of Owen Sound. Faded Main Street Hair Salon is my business. I kind of took a few notes. Do you mind if I just ask a few questions about this here, this document?
That's what we're here for.
Great, thank you. Two things that I haven't got in my hand right now is I haven't got a plan where it says from the council in our city, we had a decrease of 13.46% from the province in transfer payments. I wonder if the council has a plan set forth to try and recoup that, or where we're at with that. And I guess my other question is, a 4.9% increase in the levy. As a young investor in the city of Owen Sound, I own buildings in Owen Sound as well as rental houses. My question will be, what will it be in 2024 if it's that high now? Okay? And do I continue to invest in the city of Owen Sound with those increases? All right? Because as a landlord, in a residential, last year I could only increase my rental properties, residential rental properties, less than a percentage, okay? And I have friends that will probably pay over $1 million in taxes this year, so that's gonna be a $49,000 increase in their tax bill. And that's a lot of money. And I just wanna know, and I guess we talk, I know, Your Worship, you had mentioned a few weeks ago about regionalization. And 4 years ago, I know that I sat and I ran for council, and we were at the Chambers meeting that night, all candidates meeting, and I think every councillor here basically said they wanted to get together with all the other all the other municipalities. So I guess my question right now, my final question is, and I haven't got it in my hand yet, and I'd like to see it, and I don't think it's the staff's, I don't think the City of Owen Sound, the staff has to do this, but I would thought the council would have a plan on how we're going to be a regional, leadership, and trying to get all the other municipalities together with us, because 4 years ago that was mentioned in the all candidates meeting, that every one of you wanted to do that. All right? So what I don't have right now in my hand is a plan for that. Because right now, this document here, this document really scares me as a potential. I want to invest more money in the city of Owen Sound. I'd like to actually add another hair salon. I'd like to build a building. All right? And am I going to have to pay $50,000 in taxes tomorrow and then maybe another $100,000 in taxes in 10 years? That kind of scares me. So all I'm asking is just for some plans, and I don't think it's fair to ask the city staff to do that. I'd like to maybe see if the councillors and Your Worship, if we could get that from you, just to see what we can do about this increase, because that's a fairly big increase. When I saw this tonight, I thought, wow. And
Fair questions.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We'll get some answers for you, too. I'm going to first make a comment on the budget itself, and I thank you for your question. Then I'll go to our Director of Financial Services to give a little bit broader response. But, I was reading some articles on the weekend, and the federal government has a $620 billion deficit. The provincial government has a $200 billion deficit. Owen Sound doesn't. Municipalities across Ontario don't. Municipalities cannot run a deficit. This municipality is the same as many municipalities across Ontario in that we are doing more and more with less and less federal and provincial grant money coming back to us. So the burden on the local resident and the burden on the local taxpayer, it's very real. And it is something that we are struggling with. We talk about regionalization in very real terms. An example would be as recently as today, our Police Services Board met with the municipality of Meaford, and there is a very a real proposal at Meaford's on Meaford's table at the moment to make a decision on contracting Owen Sound Police Services to provide policing to their municipality. That's a very, very big step in the discussion around regionalization. And that's just one, but that's a very big one. So I don't want to belabor many points. I could go on and on, but Jeff, I think you and I can talk about this another time. I will go to the Director of Financial Services and ask for a little bit of explanation for those folks here tonight, and in response directly to Jeff's question around the 4.9%, and in fact what that is.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, I will get to those particular points, but probably the most important one for Mr. Robbins is the OMPF funding that has been reduced from roughly $2 million down to what you see in the budget today, which is under $1 million, I believe. The City of Owen Sound, supported by Council, has certainly been petitioning the provincial government on that for at least 5 years now. And I would say that according to the criteria they use, we are in fact entitled to roughly $100,000. And I would say certainly in response partly to our demands and those of other like municipalities, we have seen that delayed. It will eventually come to fruition, and we will probably receive roughly $100,000. That is punishing, we don't deny that, but I believe our efforts have at least seen that delayed, Mr. Robbins. As to the budgetary increase of 496, that will work out again, depending to decisions Council makes tonight, roughly to between $100,000 and $150,000 per residential household increase. The combined rate with the education and county levy is, as Kate had mentioned, just over 3%. Certainly Council has looked very hard in the budget deliberations. We have changed some of our operations in an attempt to reduce the budget. I would say those just this past winter have been difficult to maintain, obviously with the snow we've got, and certainly we've experienced some feedback from our residents that they'd like to see us increase that. I know Council will look at that again, but we have taken whatever steps possible to reduce the budget, and that is reducing expenses. If you looked at the charts, certainly a number of our expenses are wage related. Those are negotiated quite often beyond the auspices of Council, but the ones that Council deals with directly have been, I believe, reasonably handled over the last 4 to 5, 6 years since I've been here. So Council is working hard, staff is working hard, and I mean all staff, frontline as well as management, to try to keep these expenses to a reasonable level, providing the citizens of Owen Sound with the best service possible. And certainly that's why we're meeting here tonight, the public meeting, to get input from the public, such as yourself. And certainly we are aware, and we are doing everything humanly possible to keep the budget at a reasonable level, still providing, we feel, the best level of service for the citizens of Owen Sound.
Thanks very much, Mr. Ritchie. I'm going to go to Councillor McManaman and then Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out to Mr. Robbins or anybody else that was interested. Ms. Allen gave the deputation for the public meeting. There's still several reports to come later in the meeting to where we get into the meat and potatoes, I guess you'd say, of the budget. And as Mr. Ritchie said, factoring in the county, the education levies, and possibly some further changes we may make tonight, certainly my hope to get that under 3% to that 2.9, which is not good news, but it's, for the bottom line, a lot better than 4.96. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Councillor Lemon.
I certainly agree with your comments about why the increase. And there's an elephant in the room that we can't see, but it's really from Queen's Park, a lot of this. The dropping of the funding has substantially caused increases in taxation in Owen Sound, but also provincial mandated things, like we have compulsory arbitration in certain areas. We have absolutely no control, and to me, it would make a lot of sense if the ability to pay was factored in those settlements, but it really isn't. Wages in Owen Sound are probably 15% below the provincial average, but our settlements aren't 15% below the provincial average. And this is part of the problem, but I agree with you, and I think we need to make more strenuous efforts with the provincial government to get a fair shake. And this is, I mean, we're subsidizing so much that really the province makes the rules and makes us pay, but doesn't assist. Like the library grant, I think, hasn't been improved in 20 years. The police grant is a joke. We really are between a rock and a hard place, and who's putting us there is Queen's Park, because they're trying to balance their budget on the backs of municipal government, and that's on the backs of the people.
Thanks, Councillor Lemon. I think we've responded to the questions appropriately, and of course, all members of this council are always available for further discussion on any of these issues and these topics that are of concern to all of us. So thank you for that. Correspondence received, we do not have any reports of committees and city staff. We have a fairly brief consent agenda. Yes, if we can just get through this consent agenda, we'll bring that 12B2 forward right away. Councillor Purdon.
Move the consent agenda.
Thank you. Any discussion on any of the items within that agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Lemon, 12B2.
Yes, Your Worship. I asked to consider this the beginning of the meeting because we have a large number of people in the audience with a great interest in the CN station and its future as a museum. And I would like to get Mr. Furness's report and bring that forward so there could be a meaningful discussion.
Okay. Would you like to provide a brief, you can do it from your chair there, just a brief overview of the recommendation in your report?
Sure. I think in the background and the strategic initiatives, I've given out the history of where we are today. We received one proposal from the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre. It did not include an attachment. We don't normally give out the proposal. I tried and hope I summarized it correctly and accurately. There is a lot of detail in it. So there was a lot of flexibility, and I hope that comes through in the discussion that I put forward. I am recommending that we look at a shorter-term lease with the visitor center remaining there, but really look at ways to cooperate and share resources and space. I think there are a lot of good ideas. There's a good team. As well as looking at the financial and the budget side of it. Even though that was not necessarily asked for, I do think we need to look a little bit more at where the proposal and hours of operation. But I believe we can do that through further negotiation and discussion, and I'll leave it up to further discussion with council.
Okay. There is a recommendation. Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I would move the recommendation and that we approve in principle entering into an agreement with the CWC and that further negotiations continue under that framework, because there are grants available, there are things that they've got to get going on, and they need that approval as in principle in order to start the process. So I would make that motion.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Body.
Mr. Furness, there's going to be a signed lease. It's got to come back to council to be signed by clerk and mayor. When do you think that would be ready? When do you think, we're as good as March already?
I guess that depends on how our discussions go. I can't predict when. I mean, it shouldn't take long, but I'm available as soon as possible to start discussions. So
I understand because of Family Day, our next meeting is on into March anyway.
March 3rd? March 3rd.
It's almost a month. I'm just thinking that it can't be drawn out much longer. You know, springtime coming, tourism season coming.
Sure, it shouldn't take long, but we have to have those discussions. So.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Wright.
Okay, then let me just be straight on this. We're approving it in principle, and then I hear that we're going to negotiate and bring back a lease, which is fine. But does this mean in the meantime that this group has the opportunity now to apply for grants to move ahead? I'm just not sure about that. Are we allowing them now that we're approving it in principle? Does this give them the opportunity now to apply for grants for the future now that are perhaps running out? Say, you have to get a grant in by the end of February, and we maybe won't sign the lease until March. How does that work?
Just going to go to the city manager.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wright. Keep in mind that this report is dealing only with the leasing for the CN building. Any applications for grants for museum work, etc., are really nothing to do with the city, arguably. They're with the province and other funding agencies, and not something that this municipality has control over.
Okay, so then they're free to act. Fine, thank you.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship, and just sort of following up on that, I understand, as the city manager very well put, this is just their proposal. The nuts and bolts still have to be negotiated, discussed. So with that in mind, just a couple of points that I'd raised when I was reading your report to Mr. Furness. They talk about the waterfront interpretation sort of outside of the building, and I think that's an exciting idea. Obviously, that would have to come back to, that particular point would have to come back to the city, through the city, on what that would mean.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of interpretation and artifacts that are done right now, and the suggestion was a lot of that can be expanded.
Right.
And so whatever approval process would be required for that, some of it might not, there might not be any if it's directly around the station, but if they're going beyond, elsewhere in the harbor or downtown, then whatever our regular planning approval processes are would kick in.
Is it your understanding that the Harbor Night series would still continue as is?
I think that the spirit of what's in the proposal is this, and many other things would continue and new things would be explored.
You mentioned the budget, or there's not a detailed budget, and you mentioned that in your recommendation.
Right.
Is there an assumption that there's a city contribution to that budget?
That is not outlined in the proposal. I put the amount that the city has as a line budget item that goes to the Owen Sound Museums. I put that in there. That is not identified or talked about in the proposal, and that's not something, I've just indicated what that amount is and what we have in our budget. So that's not detailed. I don't know where that proposal just talked about one number that they're using.
Okay. And the last comment, and it's probably the most important, there's no mention of an agreement with this group and the Owen Sound Museums.
Right. There is the proposal states a willingness to accept the artifacts, and they may, today, I don't know, have an agreement or have an understanding.
So obviously that would come back.
That would
then.
be an important point.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that.
Good. Councillor Lemon.
Just a point of clarification, in the request for proposals, my understanding, we did not ask for a budget.
No, we didn't.
Okay, so the fact that there isn't one is not, is because it wasn't requested. And the other thing is, to me, the negotiations between the Owen Sound Museums and the CWC have nothing to do really with council. It's between the two organizations. It's not a business of the city.
Councillor Purdon.
Thank you. I would like to say that I support this motion of Councillor Lemon's, but also I'm very pleased with the report, and also I think just the way the report is framed, as this is a work in progress and a great opportunity to work out a way of keeping that great facility going with a new group, and really building our rail museum presence, and very thankful to the group, the Community Waterfront Heritage Centre for all of the work that they've done, putting the proposal together, and for all of the people who've come forward in support. I think it is a venture that's going to take community support. It's certainly been demonstrated to date, and it'll need ongoing community support, and I'm very pleased to see this motion come forward.
Is there further discussion? Oh, Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, well, I'd like to follow up with Councillor Purdon's compliments to the group as well. I also felt that because they have been so well supported by the community, that it would be very nice if the city could support them, and the amount that's in the budget for that museum for this year is, I think, $30,200. I was about that, and I was wondering if I could make a motion to give that to that group for this year.
So that would be a friendly amendment or not to the mover of the motion?
Well, it could be two different ones, I guess.
Your Worship, I really believe that would be two different motions, and I think it's important to get approval in principle before we talk, and perhaps the other motion could be dealt with through the negotiations.
Okay. Further discussion? So that particular, it hasn't been accepted as friendly amendment, so it's not on the table.
And, Your Worship, I would ask for a vote of record.
Sure. Councillor Adair.
Just a couple things. I think this is great, and I'm certainly hoping that at our first meeting in March that we have something to approve. I think that Council tonight will show our willingness to move ahead, and I don't think it'll be too hard to come to some conclusion. We certainly know that nothing would happen in Owen Sound without volunteers. There would be no minor sports, there'd be no Girl Guides, there'd be nothing, no Festival of Northern Lights, and we certainly know that community groups that come forward to do things make them happen. We have the band shell is an excellent example of that, and the Harmony Center is another excellent example, and this is sort of example number 3 of that. It does clearly show here in the recommendation the city will be supporting this with the costs of utilities, the cost of maintenance, the cost of snow plowing, the cost of security, and the cost of outside maintenance. So I know that the city has been criticized in the past by various arts groups for not supporting things, but in fact we support all kinds of things, often in kind, and we will continue to do that with this group. So I'm looking forward to that March meeting when we can sign a lease agreement and make this happen.
Okay. City Manager.
I'd just like to caution everyone that because we have to get agendas put together and we have to get them out into a public forum, it will take significant cooperation in a very short period of time to meet that deadline.
Point noted. Ready for the question? We're going to have a recorded vote.
Councillor Adair.
In favor.
Councillor Boddy.
In favor?
Councillor Chamberlain.
In favor?
Councillor Lemon.
In favor.
Councillor McManaman.
In favor.
Councillor Purdon.
In favor.
Councillor Twaddle.
In favor.
Councillor Wright.
In favor.
And Mayor Haswell.
In favor.
Thank you. That motion passes with 9 votes in favor.
Great. Congratulations to all involved. Thank you to Mr. Furness for getting this recommendation and report put together for council to make the decision on. If anyone hasn't seen yet the movie, The Monument Men, I would highly recommend it. It's a really fascinating movie about World War II, in particular, Special Forces unit that was sent to Europe to recover stolen artifacts, art, and sculpture. And it really speaks to the theme that we're seeing here tonight, which is the preservation of our history. So I thank you. We are back at 12B1. We have a report, again, Mr. Furness. Results of the RFP for selection of real estate agent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the reports, maybe I could,
Maybe we'll just give 2 minutes for everybody to, oh, we've lost our entire audience now, almost. Thanks to those who are staying. Okay, Mr. Furness, I think we can hear you now.
so some time ago, we have a number of properties that we own, both commercial, residential, and industrial. And it was thought the best way to move forward to help market and sell those properties would be to select a real estate agent. We issued an RFP. We had 7 proposals. We had a review team review those proposals, and we are recommending the winning proposal, or the best proposal in our review team's mind, as Mr. Coates and Mr. McFarland. And the different point spread of the different areas in terms of the criteria are outlined below. So anyone had any questions? Sure.
Okay, we'll start with Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Normally, a report on a request for proposal would include the scores and all the people who submitted proposals. I don't see that information here, so I'm being asked to make a decision in a vacuum. I don't even know how this proposal scored. And I just find that a little troublesome, because I think that information should be here. When we look at the scoring criteria, and it doesn't talk about, at least in the report, about any reference to experience dealing with development properties. And most, if not all, of the properties that we are looking at potentially putting on the market, with the exception of potentially some infill housing lots, and I'm not sure that there are any of those ready to go to market. Most of the properties that we're dealing with would require development, and in some cases significant development. Later on the agenda, we're talking about declaring the jail and the old courthouse as surplus, and they are complex properties to deal with. But I don't see any evidence in this report that that was in any way a criteria. I find it difficult to raise this point because there are 2 real estate agents who work together who have been recommended, and I don't want my comments to be in any way construed as a reflection on my feelings of their ability. I'm just saying that there's an awful lot of information not in this report that I need in order to be able to make a decision, information that normally would come forward, and I don't know why it's not here.
My understanding, talking to the purchasing agent, is that you don't necessarily provide all that information. We can provide you with a chart that shows that who made the proposals and where they scored, and that was part of the experience in a general way when we reviewed them.
But
I know what you're saying.
I don't see addressed experience with development properties, which I think is a very important consideration. And normally in a request for proposal, as with a tender, all the proponents would be listed and the aggregate scores would be shown, not the specific scores necessarily in each area. Yeah. So I'm very disappointed in the report. I'm not, and again, it's not, has nothing to do with the individuals who are recommended. It has to do with the information I've been given to make this decision, and I don't feel it's sufficient.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have similar concerns, but I'm just wondering if we could defer this until our next meeting, or if that's going to cause a holdup of getting our property out. I'm not sure 3 weeks will make a difference, but could we have this report back with that information in 3 weeks?
We can do that.
Okay, then
Okay.
I'll make a
Motion
motion
to
to defer.
Any further discussion to the tabling? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. 12B3. This is a report again from Mr. Furness. This is an agreement with the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Employment to offer youth programs, for small business. It's that time of the year again.
This is another new program through the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Employment. It's the same ministry that manages our small business enterprise centers. This is a pilot program for $80,000 over 3 years. It's specifically targeting young youth small business startups. And usually their process after pilot programs is to review those pilots and make them more permanent. In this case, the agreement is for $80,000 over 3 years. We are managing the information, the training, and the monitoring. There is another group that actually awards the funding to successful applicants, and then they would monitor it. It's very consistent with the programs that they currently deliver and manage.
So this is a program, Mr. Furness, that's administered by the Small Business Enterprise Center. It doesn't involve any municipal funds from the city directly, and it provides opportunities for youth to
Yes.
develop and implement or really create their own small business.
That's correct.
Any decisions? Councillor Purdon?
I'd move the recommendation. We heard about this in economic development. It's a great, good news story for young entrepreneurs and I think for the city.
Certainly the largest growth in the employment sector in Canada in the last year has been in the entrepreneurial small business sector, and that's where the most economic action has been happening, and that's been well documented right across Canada, but particularly in Ontario. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report, again, Steve, from you with regards to the former jail and the former county courthouse building.
Correct. So we've taken ownership now of the jail. These two buildings and facilities are joined with shared walls. There is currently no use in the jail, and I think in terms of exploring ways to get a use in that building, that we need to move forward and declare the property surplus, and as well as the court building, to look at other alternative uses and repurposing. Currently, the court building is used for studio space and short-term leases. I think the best way to preserve heritage buildings is to get a more longer-term use and a functional use that can reinvest in the capital and the long-term maintenance. So this is the first step in declaring the building's surplus.
Councillor Bellotti.
I would move that recommendation. Looking at the court building itself and looking at the roof of it from the east side, we're not maintaining it well. We can't really afford to maintain it well. We don't generate enough rent. Somebody in a private business would be able to maintain the building and look after it a lot better than we can. The jail is a wonderful piece of property if you ignore the fact that it's got a jail on it. The chance for somebody to develop a downtown entire block, city block, is a great opportunity for somebody. We're never going to use it appropriately. We're never going to take advantage of it as a municipality, and I think this is the sooner the better. So I move the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Well, the city's again between the proverbial rock and a hard place. We also have to remember that the jail is in the registry as a historic property. We have not properly maintained it, and that's been the problem for years. But we've got to make sure if we do sell it, that we're not going to see further deterioration. And if you let the building get to a certain point, it's not worth saving. I just don't want to see that happen to that extremely good piece of architecture. The jail, well, what can you do with the jail? I don't know. But except possibly demolish it. But the courthouse building, when we're listing it, we must state very unequivocally that that building is a historic building and part of our heritage and cannot be allowed to fall into further state of disrepair than it already has. We should, now, I'm just ashamed of what's happened to it.
Councillor Body.
Thank you. Just a question for Mr. Furness. It's the courthouse that is designated, and because it's designated, any builder would be buying a building that is designated as heritage and have to maintain it based on the registration? Am I right?
And I'll let Pam speak if I get it wrong, but the court building is designated, which means it has to be maintained and preserved and protected. The jail facility is listed, which means while it's preferred, there is options if a building, if a demolition permit comes in, there's a longer period of time for council to review that and declare it and designate it. So they're both important, but one has a different designation.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to clarify.
I suggested maybe Prince Charles would like to buy it. Councillor Lemon.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the interior of that is also designated as well as exterior.
If I could, through you, Your Worship, just add to what Mr. Furness had said about the designation. There are in the designating bylaw certain features of the courthouse, you're correct, that are specific to the designation. Moving forward, ideally, all those features would be maintained and preserved with the building. There is a process under the Ontario Heritage Act to allow for changes in those designated elements where the net gain or the positive outweighs the negative. So perhaps there's an interior feature, just speculating that it's really hard given the structure of the inside to maintain, but they're going to maintain the building and, all of the outside. We can go through a process to amend the reasons for designation and allow that alteration. So there is a process, as Mr. Furness has pointed out, and we'll certainly be working with any developer on that.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Furness, the people that are renting space in there now, that would continue?
My understanding is it's just short-term, and that would continue until a proposal was received.
Thank you. The best way to, as you said, the best way to preserve a heritage building is to find a useful purpose for it. So look forward to developers stepping forward.
Councillor Purdon.
I just had a few questions about the use of, when it's declared surplus, if it goes ahead declaring it surplus, there are people using that space right now. Would there be do we have agreements where we have to give them notice? Because the reason I'm asking is because there are a lot of people use this space as studios, they have students. That's not space that's easy to find at the moment in the city. So that was the one question.
I believe there are short-term leases and you'd have to give them notice, but, thinking about this process and it becoming public, it may be beneficial to have a discussion or some communication with them now. Some of them are businesses and it's their livelihood, and I think that's fair to talk to them about this. This doesn't mean that the building is going to be developed tomorrow, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's really important in terms of communication with those stakeholders so they don't hear from the media what the intent is with the city. The other is just the whole notion of making sure that that courthouse building is protected properly. And I know that we're, as a city, very concerned about that, are going to do it, but I just really want to emphasize that because you know, for a newcomer coming to this city, that was a building that I just couldn't believe. It was a really beautiful building, and I think it's something the city's very proud of. And when it's ours, we know at least it's going to keep standing. And as long as it keeps, well, maybe we should get rid of it so it does keep standing. But I think we need to have those protections. So I just really want to say that.
City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm the bad cop in this. That building doesn't meet code today, probably. Certainly doesn't meet accessibility criteria that we're going to be responsible for. I would agree. I saw the analysis on the jail done, which said it needed a new roof, and that roof looked in spectacular condition compared to the roof on the courthouse. We are rapidly getting to a point where we should not be renting that building. If you've been in there lately, I'm not proud of the condition of that building in any respect in how we're renting it. The best thing for that building is to find someone with enough foresight and enough money to repurpose it in a very positive way.
Councillor Chamberlain?
Well, point number 2 in the recommendation is about scheduling a public meeting to receive public comment. I just wondered if we might not actually have that public meeting right at the jailhouse up in the courtroom upstairs. Would it be too?
It's not accessible.
Not accessible.
And
okay.
I do think it's important that when we have
We could
public
maybe have
meetings,
pictures
we
then?
have them in accessible
Yes.
format.
So maybe we could have some photos of that at that public meeting.
I'm sure through Community Planning Heritage Advisory Committee, there would be an opportunity to host such an event.
Okay.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's interesting that the Prince of Wales believes that the best way to preserve heritage buildings is to have them repurposed or adaptive reuse. He does not believe that government should own every heritage building, and he doesn't believe every heritage building should be turned into a museum. He believes that they should have a use in the modern context with the historical nature of the building. And I'm hoping that with the designation that we have on that, and with the developer with some money, we can achieve that goal of having a beautiful historic building serving a purpose in our modern times, that it's not a drain on government funding. So I'm supporting the motion to declare it surplus.
Essentially what that does is it allows for staff to move a little bit more nimbly should a developer step forward and show some interest. Councillor Wright.
And I'm glad you said the word developer. I'm certainly in support of this. I don't think we can have another building on our hands. We just can't manage what we have now. And I guess my concern would be, I don't want us to sell it to somebody just to get rid of it, just to get it off our hands, and then we see a building that somebody's taken over and can't do anything with it, and it becomes a derelict piece of property. So I'm hoping that we'll be choosy about who buys it. I'm hoping that a developer will come forth. I've always felt that that courthouse would make a lovely little boutique hotel, and it would have been great without that razor wire out the one window or on the roof. But I think that if somebody has some foresight in there that they can picture what could happen to that building, you know, I think we'd be very fortunate.
I think they've taken the razor wire away now, so it's... Well, we do have a motion on the floor, and we certainly are making some, I think, strides in the right direction to be good stewards of this beautiful heritage property. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. For those of you that haven't been in the new location of the Bruce Gray Child and Family Services, there's an example of, although not an ancient building in our terms, it is an old building, the former Y, that was repurposed. And that was an adaptive reuse of an existing structure, and certainly they indicated to those of us that were there, it was about 40 cents on the dollar in terms of the cost to retrofit that existing structure. So they saved a significant amount of money in light of the fact that they didn't do a new build. So there certainly is, as the Prince himself said on our little video, that adaptive reuse can be done and a tidy profit can be made. So, moving along, we have a report from the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library Board. This is a vacancy on the board. And if I could get a mover to identify the candidate for appointment.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would move that we appoint Robert Droyne to fill the vacancy on the library board.
Okay. Discussion? Is it difficult decisions when we have so many people interested in these positions? Very, very good candidates, all of the above. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the city clerk. This is on some encroachments around the Roxy. It's bedtime. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that we approve the encroachment agreements with the Roxy for the sign which hangs over the marquee on 9th Street, and also for an encroachment along the south wall at the back of the building.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a report from our Human Resources Supervisor. This is a 2014 salary for non-union employees. It's a recommendation. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the recommendation that we implement a 1.25% salary increase for our non-union employees.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We now have a report from our Manager of Accounting Services. This is the 2014 operating and capital budgets. We had a presentation earlier, and there is a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Boddy.
I may be doing something without any warning to anybody in a sense. We've had two pre-budgets that we weren't able to be presented with the police budget. I see the chief here tonight. This is the first time we've seen the budget. I wonder if Kate can set up, Ms. Allen can set up the police budget, and if the chief would take us through it, give us a bit of a presentation of what it is and where it is, since this is really the first time we've seen it public. I didn't warn you in advance, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I'm hoping you can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Sorenberger, for... Is all of council interested in this presentation as well? Okay. There we go.
Through your worship, I may just point out one thing. The budget as it was sent out with your packages had a typo in this lead sheet. It wasn't picking up the totals. It has been corrected in this version. There's no change to the actual detail line items, just one item wasn't adding properly. So we've corrected it in this version that you can see up here, and as well, this corrected version will be posted tomorrow on Civic Web.
Sure.
So I'll move aside and let Chief Sorenberger.
I'd like to welcome Chief Sorenberger and also acknowledge the chair of the Owen Sound Police Services Board, Mr. Garth Pierce. Thank you both for attending this evening and this impromptu request from council to provide a little overview on the police board budget.
So the order's not quite like it's the same order as you have it, but it's in our template, which just looks like that. It still does 3,000, 3,132.
Okay. It's going to be a bit confusing because I have our paperwork that is different a little bit than what the city's is, but I'll try and move along with what it is. make sure that I speak and enunciate. The Police Services Board budget last year was, the board itself was at $67,000. We've increased the board budget to $75,000 to reflect an increase in salary for the one person that works as the board secretary. There's a slight increase in remuneration for board members, and we have in fact added on the appreciation expense for the appreciation function. That was at the request of the city, and we did that to show it. That fund or that appreciation night actually comes out of what the board reserve is, and is raised that way. It's not, we don't use taxpayers' money for that, but that's where that comes from. So you can see an increase from last year. We were over budget last year in the board. It was negotiations last year. We had lawyers' fees and things like that, but we have increased it again to that $75,210. That is, in fact, a more realistic estimate of what the, or more realistic budget for the board going into 2014. Is there any question on the board expense itself? I must apologize. The pre-budget, the reason that the board wasn't, or the council wasn't presented at that time is that we were still in negotiations with several different police services with, in regards to dispatch services. And then the last budget meeting, since I'm the person and there isn't a deputy that could have come to present, I was unavailable on your last day. You did have some estimations of where they were, and we're in fact pretty close to those estimations, but this is the hard fact numbers. So moving on to the next page. How do I do that? Okay. All right, perfect. Let's see. Okay. So we go into our police officer section here. It should be noted that as a result of negotiations, there were salary increases for our uniform officers through 2012, 13, and 14. 2015 is a negotiation year as well. 2012, they received a 3% back pay, and in 2013 and 14, it was 3.5% a year in the increases. So those increases that are there, offset, I'm just going to make sure. In 2013, our budget area was $5,335,000. And in fact, this 2014, we're $5,504,000 in our officers. So our officers have risen that much with our staffing levels. We are now at an authorized strength. We have an authorized strength of 41. We have 39 officers in place. We have an authorized strength of 4 part-time people, but we are only employing 1 right now through resignations and where we are standing. Now, I do have it in the budget to have a second part-time person, because they do a lot of functions, especially in the downtown area and walking the beats and things like that, that are significant. And in fact, we received a letter from the DIA asking about our area foot patrol or what we were doing for foot patrol. And it was down a little bit, and it's simply because we were down by 1 part-time officer. So all of these things here are pretty much what we did on 13. If it's not a wage increase, we kept it either status quo or reduced it. There's very few increases in anything that wasn't negotiated, whether that be a clothing allowance or anything else. Anything that was negotiated that went up in the contract, that's where it is. So we held the line on everything else.
Excuse me, Chief, we're just going to maybe have one question. Councillor Lemon.
Yes. Why are we carrying car allowances?
Because there is one car allowance that is done contractually, and if you want to go in camera, we can discuss that.
Okay, it's one that is still there.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's one and only one. Okay.
carry on.
So that is the officers. Again, we've applied for all the grants that we can with the RIDE program. We get $13,000 in grants there. We've kept our auxiliary police. We've actually lowered our uniforms and equipment there because we're not hosting a class this year. We will be next year. It costs a great deal to equip them. We have a lot of equipment in stock right now, so we're hoping that we can if we do hold any classes or replacements, we'll measure them up for what we have so that they'll fit into our uniforms. So, so that's how we're going to fill those spots. No, we're not anticipating running a class, so we should be fine, but we do have a lot of equipment in place now. Any other questions about that? So in our civilian section, we're bringing in total revenue of $1,076,000 through our different dispatch contracts, through our 911 answering services, through our fire revenues and paging, and $120,000 in CPP grant towards that. So our dispatch grants, bringing in that $1 million, and we spend in personnel $1,045,000, we actually end up on the plus side of $31,000 in what we bring in compared to what we spend there. So that, or what we've estimated to spend, or what we said we will spend in 2014. What we had intended to do with the dispatch contracts and in moving forward is that we want to grow the organization that way without it being a problem for the taxpayer of Owen Sound. We'd like to be able to hire more people and have someone else pay for it, so create jobs in Owen Sound. I know that government isn't responsible for doing that, but we have a success going on right now that is talked about all over the province, whether it be at AMO or at the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, or even in the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. What we're doing is talked about, and Owen Sound and this Police Services Board should be very proud of what we've done in such a short period of time to be able to raise that kind of money and the investment in infrastructure on it to provide dispatch for as far away as I'm going out to Dryden, Ontario in March, and we will be providing dispatch for them hopefully by the 1st of June of 2014 if it's allowed. Right now we dispatch for pretty much every fire service in Grey and Bruce County. We also dispatch for Elmer Police, Port Hope Police, Saugeen Shores, Hanover, West Grey, Wingham. We were dispatching for the Pembroke Police Service. They were taken over by the OPP. They were already under a costing process when we had started that, dispatching them, so we knew that that was going to happen, and they were in fact our, if you want to say, guinea pig into the foray of doing this, and so that's how we were able to raise those revenues. So that is what we have in the civilian budget there. So we are very proud of that, and with the grant and everything else that we've, and our third-party criminal record checks, we're planning on removing about $1,500,000 out of the budget and applying that, to removing that by the revenue that we've got in, sort of bringing it in and paying off those things. We've got an increase here of 2.88% or 2.99% for 2014 over 13's budget. That is, we've run into a situation where we've got a retirement, but we have to train somebody to fill that retirement, so that training process takes about 9 months. So we're kind of on the hook for 2 people doing one job, but we have to do that. It's an adequacy standard that we have to provide. That's included in here. There are other areas that predominantly the wage increases are here, but in reflecting the overall wage increase, and our dispatchers got more than that 3.5% simply because they were lower paid, and when we were at the arbitrators, they were going to get a lot more than what we ended up giving them, but it was able to be negotiated, and that was an assistance in building this business model that we're using for the dispatch revenue.
Excuse me, Chief, Councillor Adair just has a point he is wanting to make, or a question.
Through your worship, but would it be fair to say, Chief, that if we if you were not bringing in this revenue for dispatch, we would still have a cost. There would still be a cost to the Owen Sound Police Services to dispatch our own.
Yes, the cost would be about $800,000. So what we're removing from, like, we're also dispatching our own sound police service and fire department. And what we're doing with this, this revenue is basically providing that employment and that dispatch for our people basically for free. So that's where that model comes in. Where we're at now with that is that, again, we'd have to look before we take any more new clients on as to how that will affect our overall organization. How do we ensure quality assurance and things like that in dispatch, because we are now at that point where we'd have to add more staff, and we're not paying for it. That other organization would have to pay for adding more staff, so that's what we would do. So that's where we are with that part of the budget.
Chief, one more question. Councillor McManaman.
I think Councillor Dare asked the same question. That was my point, because and I'm pleased to see you here tonight, because this is specifically, I had questions around this, so you've answered most of them or all of them. Because earlier you'd said, well, we made $31,000 for the budget, but to look at that in real terms, we need to know what our cost would have been without any.
Yes.
And you're saying, and if you look at past years, it's anywhere from, 500,000 to, that neighborhood, 600,000, that we would have the cost anyway.
Yes, that's correct. You would.
And that was, you anticipated my next question. So we're at capacity now as far as dispatch goes.
I never say never. It all depends what kind of deal we can strike, but it has to be something that works. The formula that we use simply, or that is applied, is that what will it cost us in resources to provide dispatch for that center? And if we provide that dispatch for them, our resource costs plus our administrative fee plus a comfort zone. So that's basically how we would work that out. So if another organization comes to us tomorrow and says, we'd like to entertain Owen Sound for doing our dispatch, we'd look at all of their calls for service, what surrounds that, and then formulate a business model around that and charge them accordingly. And if they wanted it, they would go forward, and if they didn't, they wouldn't. I like to refer to it as Graham Bruce Fire and Police Services got the family plan, and everybody else now is not part of the family, but we wouldn't turn business down.
That's a good way to put it. How many dispatchers do we have on at any given time?
It varies. Over the storm that we had 4 on, because all of the ice storm that was hitting southern Ontario that didn't hit here, we put a 3rd on at that point in time because of the calls for service in Port Hope, because Port Hope was in fact hit by that. But we've built that into those contracts as well. What we have normally, we run between 2 and 4 dispatchers, depending on what it is. If it's a warm summer long weekend and increased call volumes and things like that, we want to make sure that we want to provide the best service to those organizations that we have that they're paying for. So that's the answer. We normally, like 3 in the morning, we don't have 4 on. We staff to that hour level, and I've got great staff in communications that we just ran a training program in November in-house that cost us about roughly about $10,000 to put on for all of our dispatchers, but we had dispatchers come in from other places to help pay for that, so we basically ran it for half the price for our people, using our center that we could train on and provide them with updates so they would be even better at what they do. So we have a very good staff there who are committed to, and quite frankly, as I've said to them, if we weren't in this business, we wouldn't have a communications center. We would have had to move out of it to be able to provide a budget that Owen Sound could live with. We wouldn't be doing communications. We'd have contracted out ourselves.
Thank you for that, and I would echo or comment, and you addressed it earlier, but I do think it's important whenever we are having the budget meetings, the 2 days or the 1 day or whenever it might be, it's important, I think, to have the police budget at that time as well and take it into the whole context. But you've addressed that. I'm just reinforcing the point.
And I completely understand it. It's sometimes for me, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall, because we are the last 3 years, we have been either in negotiations with the association or doing this, and definitely I want council to be informed, and working with Mr. Ritchie and making sure that the numbers are there so that you have an idea of what they are, and then, having me here to talk about them. It's my second council meeting today.
Onward and upward.
What do you want to know about snow tires?
Councillor Body is 4 on every vehicle.
I apologize for putting you in the spot, but I got to tell you, I'm really glad that I did, because I've just learned more information than I could have pulled off of that, off the paper. As a business person, I think I'd be hard-pressed to find someone willing to spend $1 million to get a return of $31,000. I would have thought there'd be more, I'm going to call it profit, but you're not going to call it profit, more surplus revenue than that. You've said some things about changes of wages and renegotiations and bringing people up a little bit, and that's all happened within the last year.
Correct.
You've talked about storms and making sure that you've got enough people on and that that's built into the contract.
Correct.
Is it then, if you had a light winter or a year of no disasters or less pressures, there could be more surplus built in?
Most definitely.
And moving, have we advertised some costs over the last couple of years that we're going to see the cost kind of decrease and the revenue staying the same over the next couple of years, or are we kind of there?
No, we're actually there, but what we've done is we used board reserve money to update our facility. We didn't go to the taxpayers. So this is going to be the third year that we haven't asked for any capital money at all since I have either been the acting chief. The first year as acting chief, we only asked for $50,000. In the last 3 budgets, we've asked for no capital money whatsoever. But we'll raise that ourselves through other means. But we used what we had to upgrade our facility to turn around, and the investment was about $300,000 to turn around and make that $1 million a year. That we would be paying out, as both Councillor McManaman and Dare said, we'd be paying out about $800,000, between $600,000 and $800,000 in salaries. Well, we're now bringing that revenue in. We're still paying it out, but we're bringing revenue in that defers that cost to us. So in fact, we are creating that revenue source.
And then there's just a savings in some capital then that you referred to. It's just, when I go out onto the street or we go out onto the street, we get questioned, well, how's it benefiting the taxpayer of the city of Owen Sound? And you're hitting
This budget would be $800,000 more if I didn't do this.
Right.
That's how it's benefiting.
Plus some capital expense
Right.
that hasn't come to the city that would
Right,
be.
yeah, it doesn't come to the city. So it would be $800,000 more. And then I would expect not to be that welcome in council chambers.
Good. That's my question. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, but you not with me.
You got the answer you were looking for? Any further comments or questions for the chief? Thank you very much for coming this evening, for presenting the overview to council, and for all the work that you're doing with the association and with police services in Owen Sound. Certainly, when we talk about regionalization, there's a really incredible example of a very real attempt at walking that talk, and police services is doing that. Through dispatch and through the current proposal with Municipality of Meaford. So stepping in the right direction, and certainly we're all behind you and the police board on this.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, we have the report, and what is council's wish? The entire budget is before us. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship.
There's
Question to, I'm not sure, to Ms. Allen or Mr. Ritchie, the question of the $100,000 for the OMEX insurance adjustment. And you haven't given a specific recommendation here. if I'm to understand it, that's a one-time cost that could come out of reserves or past surpluses.
That's correct, Your Worship. Through you, certainly we would not recommend this or even put this option forward if it wasn't a one-time cost. 2014 will be the last year of a retro payment we had that began in 2009. So this is the last year we will have that payment, and Kate is more familiar than I am. What is that payment, Kate?
100 grand.
100,000 right on. So it won't be there in 2015. Since we do have funds available from prior surplus, you could deduct that from your budget. In 2015, they both will be gone. It's just an option that is available to you if you want to reduce your budget this year.
And if we were to do that, that would bring our overall increase to 2.95, including county and school board. That's correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Well, whenever there's a motion ready to be made, I would move that we should do that, but I'll leave that open for now.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Twaddle?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I certainly support, I think, the direction that Councillor McManam is going in. This is OMEX is an insurance reciprocal. We all share the risk, all the member municipalities. This reassessment was because there was more going out than was coming in. There were larger than expected claims at some point in the past.
If I could, your Councillor, that was part of it. OMEX underwent a fairly significant organization restructure in 2009. Their audit by the insurance bureau that does that for them recommended they increase their reserves. That was where the bulk of this retro came from.
So, yeah, and I think that was about the same time that the markets tanked and and all insurance companies were hit. Is there any indication, or would we have any indication that there might be another similar reassessment in the cards at some point in the future?
We get more information from OMEX now than we did in 2009. The latest reports that I have seen, which would be approximately 10 months old, there's no indication on them that I would be expecting anything. Having said that, it is the insurance business. Looking at the results of some litigation that we have seen recently, all municipalities as well as the weather, 10 months is a lot of time in the insurance business go by, but the last reports I saw on OMEX's financial standing, there was nothing there led me to believe we'd be getting a retro.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go back to Councillor McManaman.
Your Worship, I'll move the budget as presented with that change of the $100,000 for OMEX.
Mr. Ritchie, thank you.
The city manager was reminding me we do have an issue that we were asked to bring forward by council at our first session on the Grey Bruce Foundation donation, and I think we should address that on their behalf tonight.
Okay, got a couple people I think that have to leave council chambers. I'll go with Councillor Wright and then Councillor Purdon.
Thank you very much. With respect to the donation to the Owen Sound or the Grey Bruce Health Services Hospital location and their Cancer Care Centre, I am in full support of that centre. However, due to the fact that the county has donated them $1 million on behalf of the taxpayers, I feel that the taxpayers should only have to pay once. So therefore, I am putting a motion forward that we do not make a further contribution at this time.
Okay, we already have a motion on the floor for the budget as presented. So that would not include that amount,
Could I
but you
ask-
could make a subsequent motion. It would achieve the same thing because, yeah.
So I just don't have to make a motion?
Not if the budget
If it
as presented passes.
Thank you. I withdraw that motion then.
Okay, Councillor Purdon.
I need some help with the math. I would support a donation to the hospital. And I think in my mind, I thought if we could do the surplus take the money for OMEX out of the surplus, that would allow us to make that donation and keep the rate of increase. I think the total is 3.2% as was presented. If I got the math correct, that was my understanding. The in and out. Can somebody? Is that right?
Excuse me, I'm just going to ask Councillor McManaman, in light of the discussion, if you could withdraw your motion, and then we can get right to Councillor Wright's motion?
I think that's a very fair point.
Okay.
I withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just been withdrawn, and Councillor Wright, I think your motion's at hand.
Then I would go back to making the motion that we not. And the reason, it certainly isn't that I don't support it. I myself have made contributions to it. I get a tax receipt when I make a contribution. If a tax dollar is made on behalf of myself, either by the county or by the city, I don't get a tax receipt. All I do is get an increase in taxes. So therefore I'm saying we've asked the taxpayers to make a contribution of $1 million through the county, which is certainly our proportion is about 26% of that Wayne is shaking his head. Is it less than that, Wayne, or is it more?
It's currently between 15 and 16%.
For the $1 million?
Our percentage of the county levy is between 15 and 16%.
Well, there you go. We paid that much of that $1 million. I don't think we can ask our taxpayers to pay any more than that, but I would certainly recommend that everyone make their own donation as their conscience and their purse allows and get a receipt for it. And therefore they can use it on their taxes. That's the only reason I'm saying I don't support the city giving any more money. So my recommendation stands then that we not at this time.
Okay. Councillor Purdon and Councillor
I won't support this motion. I think it's very, very important for us as a city to step forward and support these types of requests from our local hospital that's also one of our biggest employers. And certainly there's an enormous need to provide cancer treatment in our regional hospital here. It's a very, very important project that they've got going forward. I certainly understand Councillor Wright's argument in terms of the county already making their pledge, but I don't think that means that each municipality doesn't have their own thoughts or their own contribution that they can make towards this regional cancer center. I think it's very important for the city to support our hospital, and I will not vote in favor of this.
Councillor Boddy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting this motion. We keep seeing the province cut money to the municipality, but this is a provincial responsibility, healthcare. And as they're cutting hospitals, they're coming to municipalities to fill in the provincial responsibility. We, the city, years ago donated money, pledged money to the MRI campaign. The money was borrowed or debentured each year. We haven't, I think we're just starting to pay it off now, if I'm not mistaken. It's accumulated interest and ended up being a lot more than what was originally given. And that's a burden on our taxpayers right now to pay that interest and to pay off those debentures that I don't think we can afford as a municipality. I think the hospital is important. It's important to our economic development. I get that. We don't put enough money into our own economic development and promotion within the city. And it doesn't make sense to me to take money, borrow money, debenture money, to give to a provincial jurisdiction and pay interest on it when we really can't afford it. So I'm supporting Councillor Wright's motion.
Councillor Lemon?
This is one of those issues that you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. I feel we should make a contribution. I don't think we should be making $500,000, as I believe was the original request. because of the 160,000 that we've already contributed through the county, through our county levy. I think we should make something to send a positive message out, but I don't believe it has to be 500,000. Wayne, the MRI grant, which previous councillor alluded to, is that not paid off now, or?
It's fully on our books now, but as Councillor Body had mentioned, council at that time could not come up with a formula to put it into our budget. So each year it was in the budget, but we debentured it. I could look and see when the last payments will be, but no, it is still on our debenture schedule.
So we're still debenturing that?
That's correct.
Thank you. I don't know what the right number is, but I think 0 is not the right number. I don't think $500,000 is the right number. Somewhere in between, I think, would be reasonable, considering we are already contributing through the county levy. I think it's, we toured that facility, and I was embarrassed. And I realize what Councillor Body says, this is clearly a provincial responsibility, but the province never has contributed fully to capital funding for equipment or buildings for hospitals. It's only made a token payment going back the last, I'd say 50 years or 60 years. And I know in the Regional Health Centre, when that came along, they sure didn't pay 100% of that, if only they had. But I think we should be putting something in. I will vote against the present motion, and I'd like to find some number that would get enough support so that we can make at least some donation towards it.
Any further speak, Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting the motion, sorry. For very simple, two simple reasons: that we're contributing $160,000 through our county levy. That is the Owen Sound taxpayer. Second reason is, even if I wanted to contribute more, as Mr. Ritchie has just said, we haven't paid off our last contribution. We still have an outstanding debt for our last contribution. I think anyone could realize before you should take on a new debt, you should finish paying off the old one. And I believe, and I'll stand to be corrected, it was 2018 at least till that was paid when we looked at the debenture schedule last time. So it's not like it's going to be paid off even next year. We're still talking years worth of payments to just finish our last commitment. Right. I don't support taking on a new commitment at this time.
Councillor Dare.
Thank you, Worship. This is one of those difficult questions that we get paid the big bucks to make. I don't think there's anyone that life hasn't been touched in some way by cancer, but I have to look back at a couple of years ago when we were asked about the hospice and to support such a worthwhile cause. My family went through a situation where having a hospice, a proper hospice, would have been the biggest blessing you could have given our family. However, I'm not here to make decisions with the taxpayers' money on what would benefit my family. My wife and I have decided that that is a project that we support in various ways, monetarily and in other ways. And I think this is also one that if we can find the time and the wherewithal to support, we will personally support as well. But I'm hard-pressed to put taxpayers' money into this when the county is already putting taxpayers' money into this. And I don't want to echo what Councillor Wright said, but I think she's correct that we need to make decisions on behalf of everyone. And if people want this to happen, they need to get out their checkbooks and receive a tax receipt for that. So I will be supporting the motion.
On the budget or on?
On your motion.
On my motion.
It's just your motion. Okay. Please, Madam Clerk, if you could poll council.
Councillor Body.
This is to Councillor Wright's motion.
In favor?
Councillor Lemon.
Opposed?
Councillor McManaman.
In favor.
Councillor Purdon. Opposed. Councillor, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Dare, I switched you up. Councillor Dare.
In favor.
Councillor Wright.
In favor.
And Mayor Haswell.
Opposed.
Thank you. We had 2 disclosures of pecuniary interest, so we are looking at 7 votes. We have this motion passing with 4 votes in favor.
Thank you. Good discussion and a difficult, very, very difficult issue. Of course, we all want to contribute, and we do have limited resources, much like around your own home. So I thank you for that thoughtful discussion. We should get the 2 council members back in, and we'll go back to Councillor McManaman, who had put a motion on the floor originally.
I would move the budget as presented with the change for the OMEX one-time funding of $100,000, which would make the tax increase for 2014 2.95. That's correct?
That is correct with the county and school.
Thank you. The motion, perhaps, just for the 2 members of council who have just rejoined us, if I could ask the clerk or deputy clerk to read the motion back, and we're all clear on it.
That City Council approves the 2014 city operating and capital budgets as presented, save and accept a one-time $100,000 payment for OMEX. And if you want to give me some other wording. Out of reserves?
To be taken from the stability reserve.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion. Councillor Lemon is opposed. That motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Allen, and everyone in financial services for all the work getting this budget finally to us, and to council for all the hard work that you've done in the background reading and whatnot. Thank you. Moving along, we are at item 12B9. This is a request for approval for Red Hot Catering to use the farmer's market for takeout food. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Worship. I would move the recommendation that we approve the request, subject to the conditions laid out.
Okay. Discussion. Councillor Wright.
Just a question. It was only a few months ago that we approved another establishment. Are they still there, or are they're not there anymore? Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Item 12B10, we have a motion or a report from the manager of Planning and Heritage with regards to the wastewater treatment plant, site plan approval, and the removal of the holding. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I know it's the hour's getting late, but I do think this is a pretty important project.
Yeah.
Could we just maybe get a brief overview of the site plan?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. The 7-acre wastewater treatment plant site is located on the west side of 3rd Avenue, just north of the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Centre, with about 263 meters of frontage on 3rd Avenue, which is a county road. J.L. Richards with Conestoga Rovers has submitted an application for site plan approval, as well as an application to remove the H, with a number of supporting documents that are noted on page 3 of the report. The proposal includes a number of new structures, most significantly a 2,300 square meter biological aerated filter building, as well as the administration structure, as well as a number of other buildings on the site. There are also some removals and demolitions as part of the project. I would also note that there's a shoreline trail proposed along the full length of the west side of the property, adjacent to to the waterfront. The proposed wastewater treatment plant and the, subject to the conditions is a project that is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The city's official plan speaks to the improvement of water and sanitary sewage treatment, and in particular, the provision of a secondary treatment sanitary sewage facility for the city. This is a very important objective that the city will achieve with the redevelopment and upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant. As noted, the property is on a county road, and as a condition of site plan approval, there'll be a dedication of a 5.18 meter wide road widening to the County of Grey. As I've noted, there will be a waterfront trail with connections to 3rd Avenue. Our official plan speaks to the importance of urban design and a high standard in public works and projects undertaken by the city, and certainly the landscaping as well as the exterior gray brick clad on the west, north, and east sides meet this objective of the city's official plan. The requirements to remove the H have been achieved, and this bylaw will come forward to council at a subsequent meeting following giving notice. The zoning is institutional, hazard, as well as holding, and the site and building, or the proposal conforms to the city's zoning bylaw in terms of site and building requirements. There's a detailed review and comments. I would note that the landscaping plan certainly will complement the facility and soften its utilitarian appearance and buffer the location on the waterfront. Comments from a number of agencies are included. Staff are recommending council approve the site plan subject to the conditions outlined in Schedule A, and I would just ask that under 3E, there's a discussion of provision of oil and grit interceptors. And we have there revision of the stormwater management plan to the satisfaction of the manager of engineering services under 1C. And I would add that in place of 3E, that we include modifications to stormwater to the satisfaction of Gray Sobel. That is, in fact, it was missed, and we'd like to make that change if we could, and that we would prepare the notice of intention to remove the holding bylaw, and council dedicate the 5.18 meter wide road widening to the county.
Okay. Thank you very much for that overview, and it's another step in moving this project forward. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is another, as you are referring to, a significant step forward in what will be the largest infrastructure project the city's ever done, and one of the most environmentally responsible projects that we've undertaken in a long time as well. And I'm pleased to move the recommendation subject to the conditions with the addition that was outlined by the Director of Community Services.
Thank you. Discussion? Oh, Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, the removal of the storm scepter, why is this being done?
Sorry, through you, Your Worship, we're not removing the storm scepter. We just want the condition with respect to the modification of the stormwater to the satisfaction of the manager of engineering services will ensure that the stormwater management meets, as council does, holds this project to the same standard as we would hold any developer. The provision number 3 are changes that are asked for in the plans by community services. So the oil and grit interceptor is just misplaced there, and it's covered off in 1C. But we would like to make sure that Gray Sobel, they've provided some comments on stormwater, and that they're also satisfied. A fill permit will be required from the Conservation Authority, and we'd also like to ensure that they're satisfied with the stormwater management as we would for every development.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying the storm scepter was coming out, just out of that area. It's in another area of the budget, or of the plan.
The stormwater management will meet the city's requirements, so.
That's not the question.
Sorry.
Is there a storm scepter?
You're asking a planner, an engineer
Yeah.
question, and
And I
I
don't know
would
if
suggest.
Mr. Getz is able to
Mis-
answer that
yeah.
question.
Let's just get the answer, what the heck.
There aren't any storm scepters or oil grid interceptors on the site at all at the moment. And where the problem is the old stormwater collection system for the existing facility right now exits directly into the bay. And that was not remedied when they brought forward the new stormwater management plan. So we're asking them to fix that. But that doesn't necessarily mean they need an oil grit interceptor. As long as they can meet the enhanced MOE level, which is 80% total suspended solids removal, we're happy with the stormwater management system, but we don't want to tell them how to do it. We want them to come up with the solution of how they're going to address the GSC's concern. If that helps. There's so much rock down there that it's really, really difficult to put in oil grit interceptors. There are other methods of getting the stormwater quality that we want without using storm scepters.
Thanks very much, Mr. Getz, for addressing that point. Councillor McManaman? And Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Just to that point, and that, to Mr. Getz, that would be the same discussion we would have with any developer on any development. Yes, thank you. Two questions to Ms. Coulter. One, the trail around the site, is it paved? It is paved.
Yes, it is.
And that includes the temporary section, we're calling it temporary, between the north of the site?
Yes, it does. The connections to 3rd Avenue are also paved, yes.
It's just, I guess it depends how temporary that, temporary could mean years in this case. Just depends, okay. Second question, we had a commitment to the Métis for some sort of a parkette, I can't remember the exact wording around that agreement, but I don't, is that in the?
That area is shown on the landscape plan. There's a little bump out, I believe, and that's where that plan would be, and there'll also be some interpretive plaques.
It says seating node with asphalt,
Yes.
That's the area? Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I just have it's not necessarily about this, but it's about the construction of it. Are we going to run into any difficulty operating what we now have while construction's going on?
City manager.
There's a full plan on how that's going to happen, and appropriate plans are in place, of which I couldn't explain.
That's fine.
That's
Obviously,
absolutely
you tell
required.
me that we're still able to
Flush.
operate while we're doing this.
We will be able to
It's not
continue.
Please don't flush the toilet.
Right. We will be able to carry on business as usual.
Going into the bay while we're doing this. That's the only thing.
All business will continue. That's a very valid question, though, and I think, you know, as we move along this process, these are some things that may well want to get posted on our website for information. Councillor Twaddle.
Well, in fact, it is a good question, and it was one that was discussed at our meeting last week.
Oh.
And part of the approvals process requires, for the new plan, requires that construction not in any way interfere with the appropriate operation of the system while it's under construction. And fortunately, we're not the first ones ever gone through this, so the design engineers and the construction companies will be familiar with how to do that.
Very good. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report with regards to our partnership and collaboration with the Sydenham Sportsmen's Association and the Earth Week litter cleanup. Now, I understand there's a little change in the date. City manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to note in the report, it does say that the litter pickup would be on Saturday, April 19th. That turns out to be Easter weekend, so we are changing it to April 26th. It might.
With any luck at all. Councillor Purdon.
I've moved the recommendation with the great hope that the snowbanks are gone by then.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the engineering assistant with regards to the use of 2300 block 6th Avenue West road allowance from August 1st to the 3rd. Councillor Wright?
Yes, I will move that recommendation. It's to be used for a wedding, and I think that's an appropriate use for our property.
It's so wonderful. They came, they asked. It seems all very orderly, and yeah, that sounds like a great family event. So, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. That's right. Minutes of boards and committees. We have 3 sets. I'm sorry, 2. 3, yes. What is council's direction on this? We have 1 from Community Planning Heritage Advisory, 1 wastewater treatment plant ad hoc. Oh, I'm sorry, just the 2, yeah. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. And the community planning minutes, that these are the ones that were deferred at the last meeting that are back again at the table. And I had requested it because I felt that there was too much that I just received. And anyway, I just want to say thank you to our Ms. Coulter for, I went in and spent some time with her and had it all explained to me, and I just appreciated her time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McManaman.
I'll move adoption of those 2 sets of minutes.
Okay. Further discussion on anything? Councillor Purdon.
Well, just to note, I'm very pleased to see the plans for how we're going to handle planning notices from Meaford and Georgian Bluffs with the things that the staff are going to be handling for us, the things that will be coming to the attention of council. That's what we asked for, and very pleased to see that.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have 1 set of in-camera council minutes for approval. It's council's direction. Councillor Purdon?
I'll move the acceptance of.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Other business. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Worship. I have 2 issues. The first one is something I hope council can help Owen Sound Housing Corporation with. They've been working with staff to move along a project and are quite more than satisfied, in fact, ecstatic with the support and enthusiastic support that city staff have given this project. However, for the project which deals with the Frank Smith Apartments to move ahead, a bureaucrat somewhere in Ottawa has to sign a form at the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. These forms were sent several months ago. It has to do with a discharged mortgage from 2003 that is completely paid that CMHC still has on their books. It's a stroke of a pen. However, our Owen Sound housing staff can't get anyone at CMHC to tell them whether they actually have the form, when they might sign the form, how long it might take them to get the form back. And they have requested and asked if we could support them in sending a letter to Larry Miller, our MP, asking him if he might inquire with CMHC as to the whereabouts and time frame in which they might sign off on a mortgage that has been paid for the last decade. And that would be my request, that we ask Larry Miller if he could make some inquiries.
Consider it done, Councillor Adair. I can tell you that the letter was received Friday, and the draft is being prepared, and it'll be signed tomorrow. And we certainly will be, I'll be speaking with our MP, and I am certain that our MP will be delighted to track down a bureaucrat in CMHC and get that signature. I know that the county has signed off, the city of Owen Sound has signed off, and it truly is one of those frustrating bureaucratic glitches that needs to get addressed right away. So thank you for bringing that
Well,
forward.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
When I had been on the Owen Sound Housing, but we had dealings with CMHC that, they work at their own pace, which isn't always our pace. I thank you for that, Your Worship. My second issue is around the school buses being used to replace buses that are breaking down. We all know the reason, and we all know that the buses, our present buses are maybe 18 to 24 months past their best before date, and we've gotten into a situation now where if it's not a school bus, there isn't a bus running on that route. However, I'm not sure that all of our riders clearly understand why there's a school bus. They have been assured that there are new buses coming, or that they have been assured, and I think that this is the part that they picked up, is that although First Student does run school buses, that they would be running actual transit buses on our routes. So when you're standing at the bus stop and a bus keeps coming, you begin to wonder. I'm hoping that we're able to do as we did with the workshops and sessions that we had, simply put a sign up on the buses stating that, why there's a school bus, because our other buses are aging. We are waiting for the new buses. They should be here, knock on wood, by September. And in the interim, that this is an interim measure. So I would ask that happen. I don't know if I need to make a motion. The other thing, if we could just ask First Student, there seems to be a perception, and it may be a false one, that certain routes always get the school bus. I can't verify that that's true, but that's what has been expressed to me. When they do have to use school buses, they could share the joy around throughout the route so that everybody gets a school bus eventually. But I think we need to let our riders know that this is an interim measure. We are working away at getting the new buses, and we all need to be a little patient, and that having a school bus is certainly better than not having a bus running on that run. I don't know if if a motion needs to be made to that effect. If there's some indication that staff are going to jump on that, then I'll be satisfied.
I'll go right to the city manager.
Counselor, we can remind First Student of that tomorrow.
That's early enough for me.
And certainly I'm in liaison with the manager there, and I had requested that they try and find transit buses from other locations. They weren't able to do that, certainly to the degree I had hoped. I am quite disappointed by the need for school buses as often as it seems to be. But as you know, we're trying to select the new buses and then move forward with ordering them. We can certainly put that signage up in the buses. I'd been holding off, if I could just sort of, there are a number of things we need to shortly get back to our ridership with. And I was holding off until we saw the RFP results to do that, but certainly I think it's fair to say we won't be in a position for April 1st to make a big transfer. We may want to discuss, although I think given our winter, we perhaps don't even want to close the terminal on April 1st. But there are certainly a number of things I need to get back to council on, and then get back to the riders with some clear messaging. But I had been hesitant in doing that prematurely, if you will. But I'm very aware that we need to be doing some of that. I can certainly, on the buses, ask for some signage. I did ask at least that they put a sign on both the front and the side of the bus that it wasn't a school bus, that it was actually a transit bus, and I hope they have been doing that. They were instructed to do that. So I am working with transit. I'm happy to have the feedback from yourself and other councillors and riders on things that we can try and improve for our transit ridership.
Councillor Dare.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's certainly an unfortunate situation we find ourselves in. There really isn't a solution until the new buses arrive. So I think our only other alternative is to inform our riders about what's going on, so that they know that, you know, this is a temporary situation, and we just all need to be as patient as we can as we make this transition to the new buses, because they're not like bananas. You can't just go to the store and buy half a dozen buses or even one bus. It doesn't work that way, and it's not a good situation, but I think communication is probably the key with this particular part of that issue, and I appreciate what staff have said.
Thank you for those points. Councillor Lemon.
And through you, Your Worship, Councillor Dare mentioned that new buses are coming, but the new buses haven't even been ordered yet, have they?
No, they haven't, councillors.
Thank you.
Okay. Next person on the other business. Oh, Councillor Purdon, you're next.
I'm next.
You are next on my list here.
There's been quite a lot of discussion and feedback from the community about the Olympic Games and some of the issues around gay and lesbians not being made to feel welcome at the Olympic Games, and different initiatives and ways that cities around Canada are expressing their support of all athletes and gay and lesbian athletes in particular, including flying pride flags and all kinds of things like that. So I think it's important at this time to communicate our support in the City of Owen Sound to all of our athletes, regardless of their sexual orientation. It shouldn't even be a fact, but in Russia it is. And I would request that we send a letter to the International Olympic Committee asking them to change the IOC charter and to ensure that there's greater rights for gay and lesbian athletes, transgendered athletes at any Olympic Games, regardless of where it is, and that we as a municipality support that. It's something that a city councillor in Vancouver has actually made a trip. He's an openly gay man, made a trip to Sochi and had a very productive discussion with the IOC about this matter. And it was in CBC this morning. I thought, well, maybe if more municipalities in Canada express their support for these types of changes, maybe it would move things along in a positive direction. So I would like to see us send a letter.
Okay, consider it done unless anyone objects. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried.
Can I just hear what the motion is?
That you just voted on, yes.
The motion is,
Sure.
the motion is that we as the City of Owen Sound send a letter to the IOC asking them to change the charter to include greater rights for gay athletes. That's the motion.
You can speak to anything you like.
It kind of accelerated through the whole process there, Councillor Wright. So.
Yeah, it kind of went kind of fast past me. I guess I just like all athletes. I mean, to me, what difference does it make? You're all the same. I mean, it should be for all athletes, should all be treated the same. I would rather not have anybody singled out. I would just like it to include everybody, that everybody has rights. That's how I look at it.
Well, that is why I brought this forward, Councillor Wright, because currently that's not the way it is with the IOC. All athletes are not being recognized equally. So, and that's the issue that they've run into. So that was the motion.
Yeah. Councillor Body.
I just have a question. Is it the OAC? I thought the OAC welcomed everybody. I thought it was Russia that had the issue. Sorry? Councillor Twaddle can maybe answer my question.
I think what's being discussed is the International Olympic Committee's charter. And within their charter, they do have a series of criteria when they select a country. And one of those criteria is that all human rights are observed and so on and so forth, that no particular group is singled out.
Now I understand, okay.
And so on that basis, that's my understanding of what the motion, the intent of the motion is.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. I thought you were talking about the athletes themselves. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear. It's to strengthen the IOC charter. That would be what the letter is for. To prevent situations like we have right now.
Okay? Was there anything else, Councillor Purdon? Okay, Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, the first one is this Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. There's an important documentary environmental film called Occupied Love being shown at St. George's Church, 7 p.m. It's free to the public, and it's a very important film. The second one is I would like us to think about organizing a good neighbor meeting with our Georgian Bluffs Council. The first year that I was on this in our term, we got invited to look at their biodigester and have supper with them, and council to council, and we haven't returned the favor. So I thought at least before the end of this year, we should think about that. So I just like to put that on record that I would like to organize a good neighbor meeting with Georgian Bluffs.
Just to be clear, we do meet regularly, the mayors
Yes,
of Georgian
but this
Bluffs
was
and
council to
myself.
council.
So, but council to council, yes.
Yeah. Do I make a motion then?
Sure.
All right. I would like to invite our neighbors, Georgian Bluffs, to a council to council meeting before the end of for the term of 2014.
Might want to do that in the next
Yeah.
6 to
Maybe.
8 weeks.
Let's just
6
get doing
weeks.
that. Let's just, all right, I'll take away that part. I'll just say soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any particular agenda or? Okay. Councillor Chamberlain, any particular agenda, or is this more of a social gathering?
Well, they did have us see the biodigester. Should we show them our plans for something?
We could do a tour of the wastewater treatment plant.
Let's think about this.
Okay.
What would be a good thing?
So let's go first to Councillor Adair then.
Well, I think, I mean, if there is an agenda item, it's probably shared services, just so that we have an agenda. I'm sure that either their clerk or our clerk will tell us the parameters in which we can and cannot meet and what we can and cannot discuss, so it is good to have a budget. However, the characterization of that, they invited us and we haven't invited them, it's actually, we did have them for dinner 5 years ago. They had us for dinner 3 years ago, so we're now inviting them back to dinner. It's not that we owe them a dinner. We're now starting, we're now starting.
We had them, then
They had us, and so we're having them back for dinner.
I have friends like that.
Yeah. Yes.
Councillor McManaman.
If we're moving forward this, perhaps a tour of the police building might be appropriate. Just one thought, and maybe there's others.
That certainly accommodate dinner as well as a tour and presentation. I think City Hall staff is all agreeing very much so with that.
Someone please tell the chief before he reads the paper.
Okay, so we'll go according to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's never too often that we can't meet and discuss opportunities with our neighbors, that's for sure. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, first of all, I just want to say congratulations again to the Owen Sound Little Theatre. They once more gave us live theatre that is, it's a wonderful caliber of live theatre that we have, and we're very fortunate in this community. And anybody that did not see Calendar Girls certainly missed out on an excellent performance. The second thing I want to say is, well, first of all, I do think our city is doing a marvelous job of clearing our streets and sidewalks. And I've had a lot of people have said to me, the city's doing a great job. So that really helps. the other thing is that our snowbanks are awfully, awfully high, and it's very difficult sometimes to get around. As much as the city is cutting down corners and things, there are people that are having difficulty getting out of their driveways and getting out of the corners. So all I'm saying is, let's everybody use a little bit of consideration and caution when they're driving down the street, so that if you do see somebody struggling, and there are drivers that do this, stop and let them have an opportunity to get out safely. I just think that would be nice if we were a little more courteous on the roads at this time.
Well said. It's an amazing thing in the winter when we have so much snow, how many people you see out in your neighborhood, and you actually get to chat with neighbors that you might not see for weeks on end because of the weather. But when it's time to shovel, and we're like bees, we all come out and get right at it. And it's a great way to catch up and help your neighbors. I do shovel, and I actually tried to use a snowblower. And that was an event that I can't even tell you how frustrating that was. Councillor Lemon, did you have any other business here tonight?
No, I never mentioned that.
That's you behave. Behave yourself.
I always do.
That's right. St. Peter, right. Just a couple of items from myself.
I don't think there was a St. Deborah.
There was, no, but it's a whole other ballgame that we're getting into there. Meeting with the MP is coming up. We are going to be discussing the ongoing need for dredging in the Owen Sound Harbor. We'll also be discussing a request from Georgian College for support to provide funding for the expansion of Georgian College to allow for the marine emergency duty training program. And this is something that the federal government, Transport Canada, has mandated that all people working on ships must receive this training on a regular basis. It's essentially firefighting training. I would certainly hope that our local fire association would see opportunities to perhaps join in the support of acquiring this particular program here in Owen Sound. Right now, the program is being delivered in a number of sites, from Blythe to Barrie to a component of it is here in Owen Sound. Yes. There is incredible interest from communities to host this particular program in their community, and Georgian College is very committed to developing the program here in Owen Sound at our campus. And we are gathering letters of support and working with the college to move this forward. So a couple of items that we'll be discussing, amongst others. Those will be the two key areas that we'll be discussing when we meet with our MP in a few days' time. Councillor Boddy.
I can just ask you a question. You're going to Roma Ogra, I never say it right.
Yes.
We just got a notice last week that the Minister of Transportation, being the federal one, is going to be there. Do we have a delegation set up to go and discuss the harbor dredging with them, or how quickly could we get that done?
We have a request in for a meeting. Yes. That was very late breaking, and we jumped right on it. So the request went in there. Directly to our MP. So I anticipate we'll have an opportunity to have a discussion. So, anyone else? Seeing none? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Informal session. Resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wright that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Notices of motion, none. New business by resolution. Bylaws, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wright that bylaws number 2014-020, 21, 22, and 23 be passed and enacted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and we are now adjourned. Thank you. Good.
It's getting carpenter's.
Have to build out a birdhouse.
That's right.
Can I talk to you for about 8 seconds? Yes. I just wanted to...
The hospital. Stab in the heart, that one. There was you voted for it, Peter voted for it, and Deb. 3 of you. Surprised Arlene. I'm surprised Arlene did that. Do you know what it is? Because these friggin' councillors want to come in with a 2.1 budget. That's what it's under 3. That's what the plan is, and that would have put it over. It makes me sick. That's all of it. Steve?
State planning documents in there.